just to let everyone know, next to books about the mob, I love to read books about the Kennedy assassination, since I believe the mob had a major role in the events. This is one of my favorite pastimes, and I get to kill two birds with one stone. What you get in this episode of Bloodletters and Bad Men is my view on the Mafia, the CIA, and the Kennedy assassination. Now, I'm not saying my theory is the correct one. There are many good theories out there. I've also heard some that I brush off immediately because I thought they were bad. Though not to get into details of the bad ones. One gentleman I spoke to seemed to have everyone involved in the conspiracy except maybe him and JFK. And I will let you know this is why I believe a small group was involved. Consider this. President Clinton had a liaison in the Oval Office with Monica Lewinsky. There were only two people in the room, and still it made national headlines. How could hundreds of people be supposedly involved and someone not talk about it? That is a sincere question. Also, I wasn't born when Kennedy was assassinated. I've read many of his policy positions, and I find that I disagree with some and agree with others. With that said, I am not endorsing any political party. I sincerely believe that it was and is a terrible day whenever a chief executive gets assassinated. With that said, let me go on record. We may never completely know the truth of actually what happened that day, the events, the players that were part of this drama, not even once all the documents are released. Not to mention, this November will be 60 years since these events happened, and most of the players have passed away or near death. Suffice to say, not many, if anyone, believes the Warren Report anymore. The Warren Commission seemed to have one objective in mind, to pin the whole thing on Lee Harvey Oswald, the lone nut. And this is what they set out to do. One other thing before we get started. There are many misconceptions about things that didn't happen, especially since the 1991 JFK movie, which was written and directed by Oliver Stone. For example, in the movie, it is touted that the motorcade route was changed at the last moment. You'll find it discussed in many conspiracy books, and most especially in Jim Garrison's book, On the Trail of the Assassins. But truth be told, both Dallas newspapers had printed the descriptions of the motorcade route 3 days before, so that there was a change in the motorcade route is false. So let us go on now to my view. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on Joseph Kennedy, the dad. Gus Russo, in his book The Outfit, writes and documents how the mob helped get the elder Kennedy's son elected president, and I encourage you to read this book. In a nutshell, Joseph Kennedy said to the mob, "Help get my son elected president, and you'll have a friend in the White House." As everyone knows, Kennedy was elected, but a friend in the White House they did not have. Even before JFK was elected, John and his brother Bobby went after the mob. Personally, I believe they were embarrassed by their father's past affiliations, and as a way of taking a different course, they went after the mob with a vengeance. But after John was president and Bobby was attorney general, that seemed to go on steroids with amphetamines to boot, especially when it came to Jimmy Hoffa, Sam Giancana, and Carlos Marcello. Marcello headed up the oldest mafia family in the country based out of New Orleans. With an extradition order hanging over his head for years, Marcello was never deported. So Bobby took matters into his own hands, having his men kidnap and then deport him to Guatemala. Though Marcello made his way back to the U.S., let's say he wasn't really happy with Bobby, and John did nothing to stop him or slow him down. In fact, one of John's first actions upon taking office was to appoint his brother as Attorney General. And one of Bombi's main priorities was to go after the mob, and Sam Giancana of the Chicago outfit became his prime target. And Jimmy Hoffa caused neither of the Kennedy boys any love loss. In fact, Bobby went after him hard, to the point that he wanted him in jail. Though Hoffa was never a member of any gang, he was seen as the cash cow of the mob because of the Teamsters pension fund. And all of this after the mob supported Kennedy's political campaign and gave him help in the presidential election. This and the Bay of Pigs fiasco were perceived by the mob as both a betrayal and a huge threat to their power. A side note here. I may be wrong, but it seems to me that JFK was the least mobbed-up president ever. His dad had written checks that the son was not going to cash, and I believe that is what got him killed. Supposedly, when hearing of the assassination of his son, the senior Kennedy even quipped something about the mob killing him. So how does the CIA fit into all of this? The CIA, or the forerunner to the CIA, had been working with the mob for years. From Luciano making sure that pro-Nazi saboteurs wouldn't create havoc on the docks, to the mob's involvement in trying to assassinate Cuban leader Fidel Castro. The mob and the CIA had been in bed together for a long time. By the way, during the United States House Select Committee on Assassinations in the late 70s, the CIA and the mob admitted they were involved together in trying to kill Castro, and this fact was never established by the Warren Commission. Understand that the mob lost a lot of money and investments when Castro declared himself a communist and threw them out. Even though the mob had secretly helped him during the revolution, running guns into Cuba for Castro and his men. Castro even had one of the mob leaders jailed, Santo Trafficani, and sentenced him to death. By the way, it was reported that the mob's man in Dallas, Jack Rubenstein, also known as Jack Ruby, was the point man for a gun running to Castro, and that he helped secure the release of Trafficani. Now, I'm not going to go into depth on Jack Ruby. I did a video on him on this channel, and I encourage you to watch it, paying close attention to the end where a reporter at the time analyzes why Ruby shot Oswald. Not wanting this to become common knowledge, it is my belief the CIA helped cover up the assassination. Why do I believe they were not active participants in the crime? Probably because I don't want to believe it. I hate to think that a government agency would be involved in such a despicable act. Second, maybe a few government people were involved. But like I said before, the more people that know, the more likelihood of getting caught. In fact, Marcello had a sign in his office that read, "3 men can keep a secret if 2 of them are dead." And that is very true. So what about Lee Harvey Oswald? Well, I am convinced that he didn't even shoot a gun that day. According to Mark Lane, who became his family's lawyer and wrote an excellent book titled Rush to Judgment, he stated that he had a paraffin test proving just that. It is my belief that Lee Harvey Oswald was exactly what he said he was, a patsy. Did he ever work for the CIA? I don't know. It should be noted that Lee Harvey Oswald's uncle, Charles Moret, did something for Marcello. However, every time I read about him, that seems to grow. So did his uncle set him up? I doubt it. The one thing that seems to make sense is the CIA set him up. But then I would have to change my view about the CIA's involvement after the fact. Here's a question I rarely hear asked. While in custody, Oswald vehemently denied any involvement in the assassination. Then why would he leave a traceable weapon in his workplace? It was like he was waving his arms saying, "Here I am." That has always bothered me, whether you believe in a conspiracy or not. So there you have it, my thought process on the assassination and the cover-up. Though I have no way to prove it, I believe after the fact, and maybe before, the mob told the CIA This is what we're gonna do. And if you know what's good for you, cover it up or everything we do is gonna come out. Now, I would love to hear from you. What am I forgetting? Where did I go wrong? Am I a lone nut? I look forward to reading your comments.